All right, everyone. Welcome to the Carolina Weather Group. This is the Wednesday, January 25th edition, 2017. Hard to believe that this is our last show in January. This month has really flown by, but we appreciate you tuning in tonight. Sorry about the little bit of a delay. Got a little glitch with our YouTube, but I think everything's going good now. So welcome to the Carolina Weather Group. We're very happy to have Sunset Weather on with us tonight. Very neat product, and hopefully you follow those guys on Twitter. And if not, after tonight's show, I guarantee you will follow them. It's a great product that they produce, and looking forward to talking about how it operates and just how you guys can get involved in the verification process. So happy to have Sunset Weather on with us tonight. This is a live broadcast, so if you do have any questions throughout the show, please feel free to send them to our Twitter account at Gex Group, and on our Facebook page you can post questions or comments there as well. So I think that kind of clears up all of that. If you are watching on the rebroadcast, we'll make sure the guys do send out their information so you can follow them on Twitter or Facebook if you are watching this on the rebroadcast. So as you guys know, we're going to do an abbreviated version of the current weather about what's going on in the Carolinas. I wanted to show you one thing right quick, and I'll start off first because I know Ricky's finishing dinner and Shay's getting a few things done. So I wanted to show this tweet that I had today talking about North Carolina and in the Southeast in general. As you can attest, if you live here, you know how crazy the weather is. So this was how my day started. We started off with a little frost this morning, temperature of about 30 degrees, and by the end of the day, we ended with the temperature of around 70 degrees. So it has been a very warm period of weather here in the Carolinas today throughout the entire Southeast. The winds are whipping. I can hear them over the show from the cold front moving through. And currently that cold front is situated in East Tennessee, where we find our good friend Ricky Matthews tonight. Ricky, how is things on your side of the mountain?
We're doing all right. We started off the morning a little cold with temperatures in the 30s, a little bit of valley fog, and some rime ice thanks to the valley fog as well. But it warmed up. I think we got up to 65 today after starting off at like 32, 33, 31 across the valleys. The inversion you were talking about earlier before you started the show, Scotty, it was so cold in the valleys this morning, but Boone, which is what, I think 8,000 feet or so at elevation, roughly at least 6, was like at 56 degrees this morning at 10 a.m. So heck of a temperature inversion going on.
Well, it's very, just like you said, elevation dependent on the temperature. So I'm going to kick it down to Shay before we give it back to Ricky so we can start the interview tonight. Shay, man, we got to enjoy some of what you've been enjoying for a long time up here in the foothills and the Piedmont. So how's the weather going there on the South Carolina coast?
Oh, beautiful today. We were about 70 degrees. I mean, it's nice. I didn't actually catch the high temperature for today. I think it was up near that. But yeah, we've had some pretty mild temperatures. We had that severe threat over the weekend for Sunday that turned out to kind of fizzle out. We had some of that cool shelf waters of the Atlantic Ocean help to sort of stabilize the atmosphere just along the coastline. We did get some thunderstorms to the area, but not quite as severe as expected, which was a good thing. So I think a lot of folks in the Southeast had quite a scare. Some folks in Georgia, there was quite a few tornadoes in Georgia with some fatalities, unfortunately. But for us in South Carolina, we did pretty well. I think there was 2 tornadoes in South Carolina. I have to go back and look at all the information. But for the most part, temperatures are great here. We're going to start a downward trend once this cold front, the same one you're talking about, moves through the area. Right now, we're seeing a little bit of nocturnal jetting off of that, some southwest winds, but otherwise fairly calm, tranquil weather for the most part. We had a little bit of a sea breeze today, and that's about it. Thank you, Scotty.
Shay, that PDS tornado watch, I think that's got to go down in history as one of the few PDS watches that probably didn't verify. I remember there was one up in Illinois a few years ago, but pretty rare to get a PDS watch out and not have even a tornado warning or a couple of tornadoes in it.
Yeah, we were in watch zones. So for the most part, the watch zones went all the way up through, I think, Georgetown for the coastline. But those went down really quick once the storms fizzled out here. But yeah, most of the storm activity and the severe weather, the tornado warning watch zones, all were to the south of us and west.
And Shay, playing off that, we do want to say that our thoughts and prayers are with everyone who's been affected in the deep South with Georgia, South Carolina, Mississippi, places like that, Alabama that saw the devastating tornadoes. And we look forward, hopefully in the next couple of months, we'll have our good buddy Bob Jeswald on. That was kind of in his area that all these tornadoes developed. So we'll kind of talk about that event hopefully in a few months from now. I do want to say, I don't know where James is. I think we ran him off this week. But no, James is spending some time with his wife before she goes on a business trip, I believe. And David is also out tonight. So those are our two panels. I see Peter has joined us right quick. Peter, how's things up in the Philly area? And then I'll let you toss the Ricky so we can start the show tonight.
Well, it's been dark and gloomy for sure. We had that nor'easter come up the coast Sunday and Monday, but no snow with it. If it did, it would have been a massive snowstorm, but luckily that did not play out. Did have a lot of rain, a lot of clouds, and it's been that way for the last couple of days. And today we finally saw the sun after, I don't know, like a week or so, maybe even more than that. But temperatures have been in the 40s and 50s the last week to 2 weeks or so, and it's going to go down a little bit as we go into next week, and maybe some snow over the weekend. But overall, just gloomy and just rotten weather. So that's it for up here. But Ricky, go ahead.
Gloomy and rotten weather. I think that sums up New Jersey, doesn't it, Peter?
Trashy. No, did I say that?
All right, I'll stop throwing shade at you. All right. So tonight's topic is sunset weather, something that I've had the pleasure of using a few times on my on-air broadcast, and the brainchild of a few people here on our panel tonight. And it looks like we've got a great group of folks from Sunset Weather. So, Jacob, since you're at the airport, why don't we bring you in first here, and we'll let you kind of give us the gist and the overall idea behind this, and explain a little bit about what it is.
Yeah, sure. So if you hear the overhead lady, that's obviously the airport sound, if anybody didn't miss that. But Sunset started when I was an undergraduate student at Penn State University. I was a photographer for the university, and I did a lot of photography work, and I tried to capture landscapes across the campus. And I try to infuse, weather as much as I could into that, change up the sky and really focus on sunrise and sunsets. And some days were when I walked or drove 10, 15 minutes away, it just didn't work out as I expected it to, really just only looking at satellite. So I kind of, that it was a background thought until I graduated and I came back and I started working. Before I started working at AccuWeather, and then I met up with Ben, who I shared the idea with earlier when we were undergraduate students. And it spurred from there. We had Steve join us to help write the algorithm, and he can tell you more about the more programming. And then we brought Justin along really to focus on our API and our background work in that aspect. So it's kind of just spurred from just a general idea that was kind of just more of a hobby to something unexpected, but we're happy about.
So how long has this been around now? I know I've been using it for at least a year. How long has this been kind of a I guess, operational product, quote unquote?
Quote unquote. It was November of 2015. So it's been about a year and about 3 months or so at this point. And it's been a ride. I'm sure the other guys can agree as well. Because we weren't expecting too much. It was more or less, we got over a box of pizza and started talking meteorology, took the soundings, took it past photographs, past events, and it just went from there.
Awesome. So Steve, from a coding standpoint, what's the primary coding language you guys are using, and then how challenging of a code is it?
So the Sunset algorithm is written in what's called the Grid Analysis and Display System, or GRADS for short. It's a meteorological data visualization language. It reads NWP data, in grid format, netcdf format, and you can do a lot of interesting things with it to visualize that data. There's a learning curve. It has a couple idiosyncrasies, but once you get past them, I've been coded in it for about 3.5 years. So I've learned a lot in terms of difficulty. I'd say compared to Python or C or anything, it's a bit easier than those. But again, it has its idiosyncrasies, and you handle a lot of big data sets, so you have to watch out for a lot of stuff concerning that. And
so you mentioned NWP. You guys are pulling some of the models that are put out and then kind of tweaking them a little bit, right?
Yeah, we pull from the 4 kilometer NAM, and and we pull from the GFS, and the algorithms read that data. Obviously, you know, there's different parameters that's for the GFS, and there's different parameters that we use from the NAM. So yeah, we take that data and we tweak it to produce the images that you see on the screen.
Okay, and this question can go to anyone who wants to answer it, but why the 4-kilometer NAM? Why was that the model of choice when you guys were picking this?
The 4-kilometer NAM we found was so sunsets are, you know, affected by, you know, topography, you know, with the gravity wave formation, you know, with all the clouds. And it's not too mesoscale-ish. It's not like the HRRR where the HRRR can just go crazy with a couple things. So and the 12K NAM was, you know, kind of too coarse of a resolution. So we picked it because we felt, you know, that it handled the balance between synoptic and mesoscale the best.
And I'll just add in that this was also right before the GFS went under its most recent upgrade to a higher resolution, which of course now it's up to something like 13 kilometers. But when we were also getting started, the GFS itself too had not undergone its most recent upgrade. So the NAM was, as Steve said, a pretty good balance.
Now, Ben, I'm going to switch gears just a little bit because we have a lot of photographers probably watching the show tonight that absolutely love to take pictures. So the question is, they're looking at your product and it's pretty self-explanatory. It's fairly user-friendly on what to look for in the colors. What type of clouding are you looking for to get these colors on the warmer scale? I mean, what are photographers looking for when they see your product and they say, okay, it's going to be a good sunset based on these colors? But what does that really mean?
So interestingly enough, that was actually our biggest challenge when we started out, because we realized that if we asked 10 different people about their definition of a great sunset, we'd probably get 6, 7, 8 different answers. So once we determined what we wanted to consider to be a good sunset, we really wanted to target the presence of clouds, specifically high clouds, mid-level to high clouds that weren't too thick. So more of like a thin or not quite overcast mid to high cloud situation that can kind of act as like a movie projection screen for the sunlight at the end of the day to light up the undersides of them. So as whether or not people know this or not, our scale essentially tries to treat a clear sky as the middle of the road of the scale.
Very interesting, yeah, because we have some beautiful ones here in Charleston, and we have the ocean to thank for that a lot of times for the different types of troughing or mid-level clouding. There's all kinds of high-level clouds that scoot over the coastline that create these just gorgeous sunsets, and that goes for anywhere along the eastern coast. But you know, I always think, okay, we got a cold front coming, and then behind cold front. So how do you weigh your sunset forecasting ability with cold fronts in general? Do you really like lean on those, or do you just sort of let the model do its work for you?
So yeah, with regard to frontal passages, that's actually, I mean, going into this, we realized that particularly a cold frontal passage, that's really an opportunity in the wake of that when you start to get some clouds to clear and you get to some sun on the horizon, but still enough moisture around to promote clouds maybe where you are and clearing on the western horizon. That was really a type of situation where we wanted to be able to pick that up with how we developed these algorithms. And actually on the 3 or 4 days after we launched, we actually had that similar case show up along the I-95 corridor from Washington to New York. It was a frontal passage, and the model was actually able to detect in the wake of the front that there'd likely be clearing. And that's actually part of the success story as to how we were seen right off the bat so quickly, was thanks to a cold frontal passage. So we really, with relating some pressure variables, we also try to pick that up in addition to how that relates to the moisture profile at a time.
And Ricky or Scotty?
Okay. So when we're talking about this data, obviously it has to be displayed somehow. What was the thought process about getting it to the web first and then getting it to social media? And then what you guys have done in the I guess, the months or weeks following that, as you guys offered me as a television station the opportunity to use some of these custom grids as well. Justin or whoever else wants to take that, talk a little bit about the thought process behind that and how you guys came to it.
I can snag the TV end real quickly because it was a general idea that I can't remember what the idea, like who spurred the idea, but we reached out first to some Penn State alumni just to gauge interest who are broadcast mets, see if there was any interest in that realm, to see if they were interested in just, using this as a graphic. We think it'd be an interesting, place and a good, place to put on air, because then you have, the public feedback, you get more sunset, sunrise photos, and it's a give and take between the broadcast meteorologist and then the public as well, and gets them a little bit more involved. So since then, we reached out, I think, to a couple Penn State TV Mets, and yeah, since we're about 3 dozen TV stations from Boston to Seattle, and then also up to Toronto. So we kind of span a good portion of the country, and also helps us with verification process, so we know if it worked out that day, if it didn't work out that day, and we kind of keep that in mind for future adjustments that we do make to the model and the algorithm itself. If you want to take the web page, Steve or Justin, you guys can as the TV one.
So as far as the web page goes, it looks pretty similar to how it has looked since launch. At the moment, we just produce graphics of each forecast hour, just sort of give an overview of what we process. Now, of course, only 1 hour. You sort of have to pick and choose the closest frame to the time that the sunset time or the sunrise time. At the moment, that's what we do on our homepage. I see it's being displayed up on the screen. And at the moment, we pick and choose an image which is going to be closest to where you're located, and that's what we display. We have some pretty exciting developments. I don't think we probably don't want to talk about that quite yet, but we do have a new homepage coming, and I think it'll be very exciting.
Very cool. And I realized here that you guys have gone global now too. Talk a little bit about that change and how that thought process came along.
So I'll take this. So when I first started, developing the algorithms, and Jake and Ben were reaching out to social media, we actually had some inquiries for people from in Europe. And so I figured, well, what the heck, why not? Plus, the NAM's domain especially, it kind of cuts off Canada, and we actually had some inquiries from north of where the NAM cuts off. So I quickly just transitioned a couple things over to the GFS. From a data perspective, the GFS files are about 2 times smaller than the NAM files. So so the load wasn't that so it wasn't that intensive a load to bring the GFS on, and we just did that to reach people around the world, and we've gotten feedback from pretty much every single continent except Antarctica.
That's awesome. We need to get you some feedback from down there.
Yeah.
Have you guys seen a difference in the verification? I mean, obviously you're using kind of 2 different models, but have you seen a difference in the verification on a global scale versus here in the United States?
Well, with the GFS, of course, it's more of a synoptic scale model, so it really can't capture the mesoscale features as well. So parameters are relaxed and other parameters are emphasized to reflect, more of the high clouds or more of a pressure tendency, to kind of compensate for that miss and mesoscale features. But in terms of verification, they both do reasonably well. As with all weather models, they both have their strengths and they both have their weaknesses. So we try to take those biases into effect and then adjust accordingly.
Okay, very cool. All right, so now I get down to the hard questions that put you on the spot. So any plans in the future to maybe make a map that's more zoomable or able to move in and out, or kind of make these into KMZ files we could put into Google Earth or something?
We can't rule that out.
I think I've found something here. All right, we'll let that one go. But how about an app or something along those lines? I mean, have you guys thought about doing that?
Yes. At the moment, we're focused on our API, and you could test that out right now if you'd like. We're in beta. Just send us an email. We'll be happy to get you a key as soon as possible. But basically, our API is going to be the foundation for any app that we would like to make or that anyone else would like to make. And within the next few months here, our focus will be shifting from the API to an app and focusing on what type of design people will find pleasing and what gets the job done as simple as possible.
Very cool. I think all of us in the panel will be more than happy to be beta testers for you if you allow us that opportunity. So what have been some of the reactions from not only the public, but also the meteorological community? I mean, this is the first thing I've ever seen, coming out doing sunrise and sunset forecasts.
It seemed to be fairly widely accepted. We first started off, our first, Eric Holthouse, who used to write for us, Slate, did our first story on it, and it was on a verification that, like Ben said, went from New York City down to Philly, DC, so it caught a good area. And then since then, there has been blogs from meteorologists that have written about it. They reached out to us to use our broadcast, use our graphics as they're broadcasting the weather and whatnot. So from the meteorologist standpoint, I think it's been widely accepted, and as well as the public. It's a little difficult to get with the public because we don't have the opportunity to really manipulate the forecast besides our algorithm, which comes from the NAM, and as we all know, the NAM's never really perfect. So it's a little bit difficult getting the idea across that it's not always going to be correct, for certain reasons. But for the most part, it seems to be fairly accurate, and we really haven't got too many members of the public that really, shut us down because it hasn't been, accurate for them on a daily basis. It seems like more often than not, for sure, it's accurate in their area. So it's been fairly accepted, I think.
Do you expect to get a much more greater public feedback once you guys launch the app? I mean, just from I would think anyone can download the app once it's launched and they're like, oh, hey, this is kind of cool.
Definitely, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Go ahead, Steve.
Oh, no, I was just agreeing. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, that's the whole ultimate goal, hopefully, is then, just word gets passed along. It's word of mouth at that point. I mean, you have this app, and it happens on any app that you see. People are like, oh, what app is that? Or they kind of just spread it by word by mouth. So we're hoping by that point, it kind of just, goes from there and kind of just branches off.
Have you guys presented this at AMS or NWA before, or have done any presentations on it?
Had strep throat not gotten in the way, we were slated to present at NWA in September. Wasn't able to actually happen, but we're gonna try again for this coming year. Whether or not it's like the big meetings, or even if it's like some of the summer community meetings, definitely it's a good medium to really help promote this. I mean, the meteorology community, I think more so, there's a higher ratio with regard to the meteorological community that already does know about us versus the public, obviously. But I still think there's a between us and the overall meteorology community that we can still appeal to a lot of them. So I think the conferences are a good thing to target here.
Sure. It's always amazing to me how some meteorologists don't know the products that are out there, even now, that have been out for 5-10 years. And so I think there's always opportunities to get your word out more to not just meteorologists, but of course the public, as you mentioned. As well.
Yeah, speaking of the AMS, I wanted to this year, but we have a poster ready to go because we were going to present at NWA, but I didn't realize it was going to be funding in time. But fortunately, it's in Austin next year, which is drivable for me. So no matter what, we should be presenting at Austin, let alone NWA possibly next year. So.
All right, very good.
Yep, I'll also be attending either one or two of those conferences through Penn State, so I'll be able to represent Sunset Weather as well there.
We'll have to set up something at NWA to have like an NWA contest. Whoever gets the best sunset picture wins like an AMS t-shirt or NWA t-shirt or something.
Sure.
So, all right. Well, I guess, has this been implemented anywhere in academia? Have you guys used this at all at Penn State for some of your research, or have you guys done any, I guess, grad work or undergraduate work with it?
So go ahead, Ben.
Steve.
So we were actually approached by a Stanford researcher. Sorry.
Yeah, I was just going to say from a research standpoint or graduate student standpoint, the downfall with our department right now is we don't have any optic professors or really optic driven researchers. So as far as opportunities for research with this, that really hasn't come up yet. So as far as doing anything in our immediate department, there just hasn't really been anything to come up just yet. But I've actually been talking to some of the grad students and people that have been prospective students that have been coming through, and they've either asked me about it or I've tried to tout it a little bit. A lot of people think it would be neat to do something with. There's just no funding or drive or research position because we don't have optic people in our department right now.
Sure. That's not an uncommon problem, I think some people run into. Steve, do you have something to add?
Yeah, so in terms of academia from other universities, we were actually approached by a PhD statistician in computer science doctoral student, Emma Pearson. And at Stanford, she actually used access to our, she got early access to our API. And she actually published a scientific paper on it titled Detecting and Predicting Beautiful Sunsets Using Social Media Data. And what she did is she had people rank our algorithm to see if it had predictive value. And of course, it did have predictive value. This was also at the time where the algorithm was in its very early stages. So she actually presented her research at the 6th International Workshop on Climate Informatics, September 2016.
So guys, out of all products, I mean, you guys been in this a year now. What are some of the success stories and maybe some of the horror stories that you guys have encountered throughout the first year of Sunset Weather?
I can snag that one. So I mean, fortunately, we haven't had too many horror stories. It's fun when you go on Twitter and you're verifying. Sometimes you see the chemtrail. That's one we get sometimes. That's a discussion that we have had before, but we try to keep away from it. And also when we're verifying, we try to reach out and say, where was this from? And a significant chunk actually just says from my backyard. So that really doesn't help us. It's kind of, we kind of just laugh about it because it's happened so much now. But from horror stories, I don't know if you guys have any. Fortunately, I'm not sure we've had, too many horror stories just yet.
I wouldn't say horror stories. I would say maybe things are a little bit slower because we're working on things, and I don't know. There's some things we want to perfect, I guess. But no, not any really horror stories.
No, the closest.
I'd say
the closest would be when the NAM has a really bad day, or if it has an initialization error and spawns convection 200 miles from where it should be. That always throws a wrench in things. But other than that, no. As Justin said, there's a lot of moving parts behind the scenes, which will eventually culminate in a lot of cool stuff this year. So.
And that never happened, Steve, with the NAM, right?
Oh no, of course not.
Yeah. All right. Scott, did you have another question, or do you want me to?
Yeah, I have a few more. I was doing some of the research. Before I do that, I want to talk about the verification part. How can our followers kind of verify your product? What do you guys look for when you put your sunset forecast out there and then you ask for verification? How can our followers or just the general public verify your forecast?
So as long as they understand essentially, the scale in our images and essentially what the image is telling them for their location, whether, obviously the best case scenario is we're forecasting a good sunset for point X, and somebody from point X is able to go out and take a picture of a nice sunset, which proves to us that, hey, whatever we were taking into account tonight, it was handling it well. on the other side of the coin, if we're not forecasting a good sunset in an area, somebody could obviously take a picture of a, totally overcast day and tweet it at us and say, hey, good job. But people obviously don't tend to take pictures of just a cloudy day. But in general, we're just looking for people to essentially be our eyes all over the domains that we do this for, since we obviously can't do that every day ourselves, since there's only 4 finite locations. But that it's just making sure the first step to all this is just making sure that we're doing our job of making sure people know what they're looking at, what they're interpreting, to then therefore go out and help us. And we use their verifications to also help tweak the model and tweak the algorithms. We're always looking for ways to improve. Sometimes I just remember ahead of Hurricane Hermine, I think it was back in August or September, with all the high cloud spew from Hurricane Hermine. I remember we had a couple days where the model, it was just not handling things very well. So we really utilized a couple of those days to really go in and do tweaking based on what people were sending us. So it's really a help to us too.
Awesome. And this question is for everyone. And Jacob, I'll start with you. Looking at your website and stuff, doing some research for the show tonight, I seen that you guys was featured on the CBS Early Morning Show. That's got to be humbling, for a startup group like you guys, a year into doing this, for the CBS Morning Show to kind of grab that and kind of do a feature on you guys. Talk about that and how it kind of propelled you guys into what you're doing right now.
Yeah, so actually they reached out to us December, about a month after we first started and first released. So December of 2015, which was interesting. I believe some of it was spurred because we were featured on Good Morning America, and of course there's some competition there as well. But yeah, they came to the Penn State Weather Center and we talked to them for a good 3 or 4 hours, and they did a great job with their feature and whatnot, and that really just grew. I mean, from there, that was big on social media, as they said, who to follow on our Twitter accounts, and they tagged us, and so that was big on social media day. And so since then, a lot of been what they did to help us has really been based on social media and other outlets seeing that and writing articles, and doing other TV features and whatnot. So they kind of helped us propel, kind of to where we are now with the idea of, just gathering more audience.
Any of you guys add on to that? I mean, being on that, it's kind of, was you nervous? I mean, what was the whole process? I mean, what was your thoughts on this? I mean, this is a big time program, featuring you guys. I mean, do you guys have any stories from that?
Well, to be honest, so that they reached out to us, or actually the interview took place about probably a month before, or about a month and a week before or after I launched the site. So to see the site go from just like a WordPress site that pretty much anybody can have to having CBS News contact us, that really took it to the next level quite personally for me. And that was actually my first interview, so I was a bit nervous.
All right.
And and just to add to that, they didn't really tell us ahead of time how it was really going to go, and just knowing how, with it being CBS Network, I mean the pressure was on, just because once we found out that this was going to be airing nationally on a weekend morning on CBS National, then it was like, we wanted to be on our A game and say all the right stuff and just come across as really comfortable, even though like Steve and Jake both said, it was a little bit nerve-wracking leading up to it, but we were really happy with how it turned out.
Very cool. I've got a question for you guys. And just say mum's the word if I tap into this, but have you thought about adding an ephemeris to your product for other photographers that enjoy your work? Ephemeris is basically what, like the photographer's ephemeris. It has the angle, the sun's azimuth, the moon. It's more celestial related as far as like the sun and the moon goes, but it's all tied into like with sunsets in particular, and even moon rises or moon sets. Is that something you've looked at?
We've taken a peek at that aspect, and more or less it's more or less just been us busy on different other things, trying to keep up with the general and releasing the sunset, and just people know that the sunset and sunrise forecasts are out at the moment. But those other things we have definitely thought of as well, and people have asked us too if we can incorporate different aspects, sunset times, sunrise times, even like you said, moon forecasts, astronomy, and something along those lines. So yeah, the thought of this really was, just to have a different, perspective from the public, so they can see, as a forecaster, we give them every day, temperature, we give them precipitation, we give them cloud cover, the generalizations of usually the forecast, but a different, kind of twist to the forecast and the weather in general, so they can have something that they can enjoy.
Very cool. One more question for me. This is kind of sciencey. Are you familiar with the Saharan air layer that comes across the Atlantic Ocean from Africa? Do you find I get a nod from Ben?
Yeah.
Do any of the models that you have pick up on that for some of the unique sunsets and sunrises in, say, Miami, Florida?
So not long after we launched, we actually tried to get in contact with a Penn State researcher. Her name's Amy Huff. Because we're working grads, which for meteorological community, it's still a relatively new language with regard to how graphics are made from a weather perspective. We ran into some what am I trying to say? Being able to incorporate data sets like Saharan air layer or stuff with particulates, there's a learning curve there with how that all works with grads. So all that is still, it's still like a work in progress, if you will, with regard to being able to take into account stuff like that related to particulate matter and dust and stuff like that.
Right. Yeah. The only reason I really ask is more personal, because I follow it quite a bit throughout the summer during the hurricane season. And I didn't check it at all with the Sunset WX this year. I know I had it in my mind. I was like, I want to check it out and see if it's verifying at least over maybe the Bahamas or some portions of the Lesser Antilles. So yeah, I'll be looking forward to it this year.
It's actually interesting. So the GFS, it has aerosol products, but to the way GRADS works, if we were to incorporate air quality data, which in any net CDF or grid format, you have to grid it you have to format so that it goes to the highest resolution. So that data is of a very coarse resolution. So if we were to do it, we wouldn't be able to resolve many of the features that we do, regarding convection or anything today. However, we kind of, incorporate that via the humidity profiles. So sometimes if you look at our worldwide view, it actually picks up on some pretty good sunsets with, right off the coast of Africa and within the Saharan desert in regards to that. So it shows it by proxy, but we wish we had that data, and we're always on the lookout for that.
Alrighty, very cool. Jacob, I know you gotta leave us in a few minutes to board your flight, because the last thing we want you to do is miss your flight home after AMS. So thank you for joining us tonight. We're getting close to wrapping up the show. I've got one more question for everybody, or for panel, but if you need to go, we're
no, it was nice meeting you guys, and thank you again. It's been a pleasure being on here, and you guys are great to chat with, and I've watched you guys before too. It's nice work. But thanks again.
Tell people how they can get in touch with you real quick if you want to give out your social media and Twitter and stuff like that.
Yeah, so our social media is it's at sunset_WX. You can follow us on Facebook. Just type it in Sunset WX, and same on Instagram. It's just Sunset WX without the underscore. And if you're a TV meteorologist or someone who wants to get in touch with probably with the beta use, or just work with the background work of the API, you can send me an email. It's at dflitch@sunsetwx.com. So it's DEFLITCH@sunsexwx.com.
All right. Get an email from me very soon, or a Twitter message or something reaching out to you.
Perfect. Sounds good. Thanks, guys.
All right. Thanks, Jacob.
See ya.
See you, Jake.
So for the rest of you guys, I got one more question, and then we can toss it to Scotty to wrap up, or some final questions as well. Specifically here in the Carolinas, have you guys seen anything where it's verified good or bad in our weather?
I can. I live in Charlotte, or just outside of Charlotte, really. And I've taken, I don't have them ready at the moment. I could go dig them up. But yes, I took several good, mainly sunrises. At my location, I can't really take too many good sunset pictures, but yeah, I have personally verified at least 3 sunrises that I can remember.
I was gonna say, I didn't realize you was from Charlotte until doing some stuff on Twitter a little while ago. So I didn't know you was a Carolina guy. So thanks for being on. Anyways, back to your question, Ricky.
Yeah, but I mean, that was pretty much it. Just anything in our area. And the same for my region, right across the mountains, anything in eastern Tennessee or Appalachia, or even just in the mountains that has verified well or hasn't verified well.
So I'm personally not sure. Sorry. I mean, maybe Ben or Steve knows.
The only generalization that I can make is with regard to being on the upslope sides of mountains. Whenever we get into northwest flow regimes, particularly in the winter, we've learned that, especially with the way the NAM parameterizes some things with regard to convection or snow showers, particularly upslope. The most I can say with regard to more toward your area is flow, mainly in the winter. We actually usually expect to have some problems in areas that involve the mountains. So that's about the only thing that I could generalize with regard to that.
Yeah. Additionally, with all the flow and the terrain, you obviously get the gravity waves. So they cause some trouble, and we've recently added parameters to account for the formation of for the formation of the gravity waves and how the algorithm treats them.
That's awesome. Yeah, from a forecaster in this area, I can promise you that it's not just your model, it is everything. Our forecasts suck this time of the year. I busted by 5 degrees positive the other day, 8 degrees negative the next day, and we're forecasting 5 days of northwest flow snow here. So God help us all. Anyway. All right. Anything else we haven't discussed that you guys want to bring up? Otherwise, let's give out your social media accounts and tell people how they can follow you. Crickets. Okay.
Well, I guess to wrap things up, this spring or early summer, I think our fans should be on the lookout for a new app, likely first for iOS and then definitely later for Android as well. And after that, like I said, our homepage may or may not change. So that's about it for me personally. Again, follow us on Twitter at sunset_WX. And all of our Twitter handles are in the description if you'd like to contact either of us, any of us.
Sounds good.
All righty.
All right, guys.
Yeah, and thank you guys for inviting us on tonight. We appreciate it.
Yeah, we appreciate you guys coming on, and thanks for your great product. I always enjoy sunsets, and it's always cool to see the forecast. So you guys keep doing the good work, and we'll send as many followers as we can.
Thank you for having us on.
Spread the word.
Yes, thank you. We appreciate that.
No problem. All right, guys. Well, next week I'm going to try a new feature here. We're going to screen share our schedule. Can you guys see this?
Oh,
yeah.
We got Steve.
wow.
Here, let me lock you in, Scotty.
All right.
All right, there you go. Now you're locked in.
So here's our upcoming schedule. Can you believe our next show is the 145th show of the Carolina Weather Group? So that in itself is amazing. So anyways, as you can see, Sunset Weather was tonight. Next week, we're going to have teleconnections and organic forecasting with Anthony Lupo from the University of Missouri and Joe Rinkin. February 8th, we're going to have Chrissy Harley. She is the warning coordinator meteorologist at the National Weather Service in Nashville. Chrissy was going to try to join us last week for our Women in Weather show, and she wasn't able to make it, so we gave her own hour on February the 8th. So looking forward to having Chrissy on. Been corresponding with her in email, and that's going to be a great show. February 15th, we're going to have the GozR/Goes16 Tim Schmidt on. He's going to talk to us about Goes, and I do believe Shay maybe can add on to this as soon as I'm done. He just wrote a new blog entry yesterday talking about the first images that came from the Goes16. So looking forward to that show. And then we close out February with Weather Folklore from John Belsky from Louisville, Kentucky. And he sent me his book a couple of weeks ago. So I am en route to Oklahoma City in the next few weeks for a weather conference. So I plan to read a lot of it as I head out there. So, and then as we go into March, Shay, as he mentioned last week, we're going to be talking about the National Weather Podcast Awareness Month. So March is kind of not full yet. We do have Lightning 101 with John Jensenius from NOAA on the 15th, and Sea Level Rise with NOAA Coastal Hazards Specialist Doug Marcy on the 22nd. And then March 1st, 8th, and 29th is kind of open for the podcast. Whoa, sorry about that. I should stop sharing.
Yep.
So that's the show coming up. So as always, if you guys watch our show and you have any suggestions, please feel free to send them to us. You can reach us on Twitter, leave us a message on Facebook, and we'll get to those. So Shay, you want to kind of promote your blog that you wrote yesterday, and then we can kind of close out the show.
Yeah, the Goes16 satellite launched in December. And it's starting to send back its first images. They started getting them back on January the 5th, and then we got more on January the 22nd. Actually, some of the first images, the magnometer that measures the sun's radiation, started in late December. So they got readings from that first, and these images are just gorgeous. If you know anything about the Himawari 8, it's the Japanese satellite, they sort of beat us to the punch getting their satellite up first. They're actually sending their Himawari 9 up. The Goes16 is 1 in 4 in a series. So there's 4 in the series. Goes16, which is GozR, and there's going to be S, T, and U following this over the next several years. So we're hopefully going to get the next Goes, what would be Goes S up in the air probably late next year or late this year. So the new feature that we're really looking forward to, there's several new features we're looking forward to, but one in particular that's going to be the first of its kind is a lightning mapper, which is going to be fascinating and be able to catch real-time lightning anywhere on the globe and study what kind of lightning, because we know that there's different classifications and where it strikes and how many strikes, and it's going to be amazing for forecasting and tools. So really looking forward to that. We'll have Tim Schmidt on to discuss, and we'll leave content to him to talk about.
Yeah, and Ricky actually went to the launch back in November, so Ricky very well versed in the subject. And I can also say Ricky sent me the GozR press kit DVD, so I too will be well versed once the show starts.
I don't know where my little I sent you some GozR pins too. I can't find mine. I have to find it before we get Tim to come on. They
I know.
have a couple freebies down at the event. Yeah, that one. That's the Lucky Mark one, I think, isn't it?
Yeah. Yes, it is. Yeah.
And then there's a Goes one too. I'm not sure if I put one of those in there.
Yeah.
Oh, this still a tidbit. The Goes16 lightning mapper is the first of its kind ever geostationary lightning mapper. So I just wanted to be clear on that.
So looking forward to that show. Tim is if you follow weather, you know Tim's a big figure, a big name in the weather world. So looking forward to that. So anybody have anything as we kind of close out? Ricky, do you have your snow meter out up there yet? Are you milking bread?
That's a good idea. I forgot about that snow meter. I do need to break that out and at least put it at a 2 or something for the upcoming Northwest Flow. I hate Northwest Flow events and I hate clipper systems too, because they're either boom or bust. We could have a clipper come ripping through here on my side of the mountain, and we could pick up a good 2 inches or so in the valleys, and some of our high elevations could pick up a couple more inches. And the Northwest Flow events are so localized, on those northwest facing slopes, that I have seen it to where in Bristol on a good Northwest Flow, we may get maybe a dusting. And Elizabethton, which is about 1,000 feet higher, may get up to about an inch or so. The bottom of Rome Mountain, which I think is like 3,000 or 4,000 feet, they had like 4 or 5 inches. And the top of Rome Mountain, which is like 5,600 feet, I found a foot snow like pack, and I found some drifts that were even higher than that. So crazy how the northwest flow events work around here. They lead to fun days in the weather. A funny event too we're doing on Saturday. You've heard of Puxatawny Phil, right? Well, here in Saltville, we have a woolly mammoth, and the woolly mammoth guesses the weather. And so I am seeing, I guess they call it Woolly Mammoth Day or Woolly Days coming up on Saturday, and asking Woolly if we're going to have winter or spring. So that should be a little bit of fun. And
well, make sure you put a liability clause in there so lawyers can't sue.
Yeah, it's Woolly's fault, not mine if it's wrong. So
we want pictures with you and Woolly, okay?
All right, I will do my best. So.
All right, guys. Well, thanks again, you guys, for watching tonight. Thanks to Steve and to Justin, who are still with us. And we also want to thank Ben and Jacob for coming on for Sunset Weather. Go follow them on Twitter, sunset_WX, and go like their Facebook page as well. And make sure you send them those verification reports. Don't forget, put where you're from, not just your backyard. That kind of helps out the situation. So for everyone for the Carolina Weather Group, we appreciate you watching tonight, and we look forward to seeing you next week.